Time Walk with Me.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Time Walk with me. Today we're going to take a look at my commanders and I'll give you an idea of what these decks do. Start at the beginning. Yes, I want to use photos to open up JPEG files. Silly Windows 11. Okay, so you may have seen this deck tech. This is Nadar, Selfless Paladin. This is a life gain and dungeons deck. So I gain a lot of life, and I try to go through the dungeon a lot with like flicker effects and stuff like that. Volo Guide to Monsters. Of course, this is a deck with creatures with different creature types with good ETB effects. So when they come into play, they get copied, and I get it twice. Good stuff. Harbin Vanguard Aviator. You haven't seen this deck tech. I haven't done it yet, but this is a soldiers deck, so I make as many soldiers as I can, and I attack with this guy and give him +1/+1 in flying, so they fly right over my opponent's defenses. Urza, Prince of Krug. This is another one I haven't deck teched yet, but it is an artifact deck, so lots of artifact creatures and artifacts and blue and white madness. Not actual madness, but... The Locust God. This is a wheel and deal deck. Lots of wheel effects. Enough said. Octavia Living Thesis. This one, I'm not sure how good this of among my decks is. It's kind of a self-mill deck. It seeks to get as many cards into my graveyard as possible, as early as possible, so that I can bring out Octavia Living Thesis, but in my tests, I could only get it out like turn maybe 5 or 6, which isn't too bad, but I'd like to get that a little sooner. Still working on it. Minsk and Boo, Timeless Heroes. This is a make Boo big, throw Boo at opponent, draw lots of cards deck. So there's a lot of stuff in here that pumps up Boo and all that stuff. Tasha the Witch Queen. This is a deck where I cast my opponent's spells as much as I can, and whenever I do that, I get a 3/3 Black Demon. So pretty cool. Alondo the Seer. You may have seen this deck tech. This is one of my favorite decks, even though it's really kind of overpowered and difficult to play because there's so much going on during my turn, and my turns get long. But basically, it lets me play lots of cards very early on in the game and overwhelm my opponents. Jurymaster of the Review. I think I recently did this deck tech. This is an Aristocrats deck. Whenever I sacrifice anything, any permanent, he gets a +1/+1 counter, and when he dies, he deals damage equal to his power to any target. Lieza, Shroud of Dusk. This is a life gain deck, plus it hurts my opponents for casting spells. A bit of a kill-on-sight commander, but I think I have stuff in there to protect Lieza. I'm not sure. Go check out the deck tech if you want to know what's in it. Zedru the Great-Hearted. This deck is all about giving my opponents my stuff and having them suffer for having it. So stuff like Illusions of Grandeur, Delusions of Mediocrity. I've got the red, white, and blue leeches in there. Alabaster Leech, and I forgot the other two. So just in case my opponent is playing any of those colors, it'll mess them up. Tetsuko Umizawa Fugitive. This one is full of creatures with power or toughness 1 and stuff that helps me out when they deal damage or attack. Because nothing would be blocked, so I don't have to worry about things dying in combat. Here's Esika, God of the Tree / the Prismatic Bridge. As with everyone who uses this card, I have built it around the Prismatic Bridge, and it's a 5-color deck. So my main challenge when I made this deck was trying to make sure I had a good mana base. And I don't know. I think I did all right. Let me know which of these you want me to do a deck tech on, and I'll know which one to do. Anti-Blight, Bad Influence. This is a fun deck. I won with this deck on like turn 5 once. I just happened to get the right cards that I needed. So it's a 2/2 with flying, and whenever I hurt myself, she gets bigger, and she can fling her +1/+1 counters at any target. Good stuff. Orvar the Allform. This one naturally is all about copying my creatures. So whatever creature I happen to get that gives me an edge, suddenly that becomes what this deck is all about. And I start copying and copying and copying it until my opponent can no longer cope, and they just scoop and rage quit. Morophon the Boundless. This one I use in a Sliver deck. My first Commander deck actually used this creature in a human deck. But then they did stuff again with slivers, so I made a Sliver deck instead. Sithis Harvest's Hand. This one is an enchantment deck, so it's got a lot of enchantments in it. Grist the Hungertide. I have a feeling I made this deck tech, but then something happened. Oh yeah, that's right. I was having audio issues, so I actually made this, but I couldn't upload it, so I ended up deleting it. So I might redo this one sometime. This one is all about taking insects from the top of my library and making them into other insects. The cool thing about Grist the Hungertide, you might wonder, how is this your commander? And it's because of this ability right here. As long as Grist the Hungertide isn't on the battlefield, so when it's in your command zone, it's not on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types. So its other types are that it's legendary and a planeswalker. So being legendary and a creature, it's capable of commanding my army. Next, we got Go Shintai of Life's Origin. This one is, of course, a shrine deck, and it gets very overwhelming when it goes off. I have all the shrines in this deck, every single one of them, and lots of other good stuff. Hinata Dawncrown. This is another, I think, kill on sight commander. It's a 4/4 with flying and trample. Spells I cast cost 1 less to cast for each target. So I have a lot of spells in here that target multiple things, and it makes them much cheaper. And spells your opponent cast cost 1 more for each target, so it's a little stacksy. Little annoying. Ghalta Primal Hunger. I made this deck after seeing the Commander's Quarters video on it. So I basically did what they suggested. I put in a bunch of vehicles and creatures with Defender and high power. They usually cost less than their power because they have Defender. And lots of other good stuff in there. And yeah, the whole idea is to get Ghalta out, and even if he dies, I can keep casting him again and again and again, because he'll always only cost 2 green. Rograk, Son of Roga, whatever, and Arden, Intrepid Archaeologist. This is an equipment deck, so it's all about getting a lot of equipment, sticking it on Rograk, and swinging at my opponent. Singer of the Dark Baron and Tevesh Zat, Doom of Fools. This one is aristocrats, the ultimate aristocrat here, being Singer of the Dark Baron. So whenever a creature dies, which, thralls die a lot in this, he gets +2/+2 forever. And yeah, basically that. Then I've got Queza, Augur of Agonies. This one is another sort of wheel deck where I draw a lot of cards, and I make my opponents lose a lot of life. Rutha, Mercurial Artist. This one is kind of a spellslinger deck, so lots of stuff to make instants and sorceries cheaper, and also lots of copying of spells. Cody Vociferous Codex. This one I also modeled after one of the decks featured in Commander's Quarters. This one is all about Living End, and I've got a Living Death in here too. So I put my creatures into the graveyard as much as I can. In fact, almost every creature in this deck has cycling, and so I cycle all my creatures away until I can Living Death or Living End, and then blam, got a giant army and my opponent has nothing. This one is kind of a joke deck based on it came from Planet Glurg. This is an awesome card. You can have it enter the battlefield as a copy of X different creatures on the battlefield, and it gets their combined power, their combined toughness, and all their text boxes and everything. And their names, which is funny. Yeah, so it can end up being a very big, very crazy creature. So there's a lot of stuff in here that copies creatures, a lot of clones and things like that. And yeah, it's very good. Obun Moldiah Ancestor. This one is a landfall deck. It is extremely powerful. Just lots of landfall in green, red, and white. Oh, and that's it. That's all of my commander decks. So tell me which one of these that I haven't done a deck on that maybe you'll want to see. And I will get right on it, maybe, probably.